Now I want to talk about the confinement. It's been 3 to 5 weeks now. Many European nations have been confining their people. France has announced the extension of confinement till the 11th of May. It started on 17th of March, which means we're talking already about 2 months nearly. And that's a minimum, because that could be extended further. The country already fell into recession, by the way, but it will be the case for many other countries. Now, I want to talk about the psychological impact of being stranded at home. Because, we're disconnected. We cannot talk easily with each other. And dramatically, this situation divides us. It creates suspicion among us. Some people look at each other like threats, waiting to be attacked by this invisible virus. What's going on here? This is fear. We should support each other, not turn against each other. In some countries, now listen, people inform on their neighbors. Yeah, they report them to the police because they don't respect confinement rules. This is nonsense. Clearly this crisis does not reveal the best in some of us. And this looks like a typical divide and conquer strategy, I'm sorry to say. I've read that in books, and we know in history it happened before. And I think it's a very different things to live through it. And I'm wondering, what are we exactly living through at the moment? We've been fed fear every day for several weeks now. We're collectively put in prison. Yeah, in prison, except the prison is your own home. Well, actually it's quite convenient because it's a free prison for the people who put you in that prison. Seriously, we're isolated for no valid reason. And some of us starting to turn against each other. What's going to be next? So I see we've artificially created a state of paralysis in many countries in the world. With confinement started one day, but have no end date confirmed. Did they give us a specific trigger that will make the confinements end? Nope. They said they will keep it as long as necessary. This is loose. This lacks transparency. So I'll leave that question with you. How would you have reacted if you have been told the things differently? Let's say for the French, if you had been told up front you will be confined for 2 months at home. Well, I guess most likely most people will have said, this is ridiculous. We're not going to accept that. And well, because it wasn't told up front and it was given by slow pieces, 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, now another month, it's been accepted easily. And I'm wondering, has this become a slow game, game of patience, wait and observe? Are they going to wear down? When is the confinement going to end, really? I'm asking. I don't have the answer. But I already see large issues we have to face when we step out of it. First, as the confinement goes on, more and more people are getting ruined individually because their jobs have been destroyed and they won't be there again by some kind of magic at the end of the crisis. Now, as confinement goes on as well, the states borrow massively on the markets. What? Did you not wonder where all that money was coming from? Out of thin air? Well, no, it comes from somewhere. And did you really think all that money to support people in distress was going to flow freely and there will be no price to pay? Well, there are always consequences and we'll have to face them when the crisis abates and we get back to something more of a normal situation. Now, when I put all of that together, the thing I want to say is we need to wake up. I think it's just that bad right now. We're being paralyzed, and I think it's time to reactualize the entire situation. Take a step back, look at all the facts all together over the last couple of weeks, and reassess the whole picture instead of fragments you've been told day after day. As you awaken, you may wonder, how did we end up where we are? And the answer is very simple. Gradually. You've not been told up front what was going to happen, And I don't know if you ever heard about the metaphor of the boiling frog or creeping normality. I'll put some links under the video, but basically it's the idea that when you do things slow enough, the changes are hard to perceive, and over the long run, it can form very large changes, but you've barely noticed. So think about it. I say clearly, we need to wake up collectively. Let's check ourselves and step out of paralysis. This entire situation has been grossly exaggerated. Alone, we're isolated and weak, but we need to connect. We need to talk to each other. Debate what's going on, raise the awareness, stop thinking confinement is the best thing to do or the only option on the table, because it's not. You have the power to say this confinement is absurd and we want to get back to normal now. And I believe you know more than you're aware of below the surface. Deep inside, you know something's terribly wrong about what's going on now. Listen to your gut feeling. I know it's difficult. I know there is social pressure. Our governments are asking us to be strong, to stay home, to make sacrifices to save lives. But have you noticed what's really going on? There is an attempt to normalize the unacceptable. Think about it. Get back a year ago and ask your old self, would you accept to be stranded at home for that long? Whereas it doesn't seem to be a justification solid enough for that. No, certainly, you would not have accepted that. But this situation just arrived progressively. So, for about a month, we gave up our normal lives. And we're being told to save lives. Really, really. You may wonder, am I being selfish by asking the end of the confinement, whereas there's still people dying? Well, remember, there are people dying every day in normal times. Yeah, we don't stop living for that. We don't bring entire countries to a stop. And I'll tell you what, it's not your fault if the people die. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, it all sounds like we're being emotionally abused. That's the best word I can use to describe that. Because they tell us essentially to stay home, otherwise we could kill people. Yeah, this is a terrible accusation. This is emotional blackmailing. Especially when you know the facts I've told you. So what's next if we carry on like this? Are we going to accept to be shamed for breathing air, for walking down our streets? Since when do we almost need to apologize for being alive? I say no, this is revolting. All I hear is guilt, shame, and fear. Anything that promotes these negative emotions can never be a good thing. They could be empowering us instead of spreading fear. They could be working on uniting us. But what I see is division. When you go out, are you not tired of being looked at with suspicion by some people, like you're death itself? We're human beings trying to live our life, not criminals. Yet, like criminals, we're being denied some basic human rights. This is insulting our dignity. So I say enough, I say no more. Let's be proud of being who we are, proud of being humans. Let's reclaim our normal lives. Let's stop these confinements for our own collective good. We need to look beyond the appearances, join the dots, look at the patterns. The only thing that keeps this crisis together is our submission to fear. When we move beyond fear, the illusion is no more. There is life, there's beauty, there are amazing things to do out there in this vast world every day. So how much longer can we tolerate this situation, especially considering there are other ways to handle the crisis? Are you willing to accept another few months of confinement and remain silent? You may wonder, what's the agenda behind? I don't have the answers. I'm looking at the facts. All I see is a disturbing pattern forming. Because it could be step one of a bigger plan when you think about it. Step one is, being forced to stay home, the economy is slowing down, thousands lose their jobs, people are dominated by fear and become weaker physically, emotionally, financially. This phase is kind of maximum disruption. Your willpower is being weakened because you're so preoccupied with survival. Then what? I don't know. But we all need to be extremely careful with what will follow. If things get back quickly to normal, then I rest my case. But if they don't, then we will have confirmations we should be even more suspicious. Now, I don't question the sincerity of many in the system, don't get me wrong. I even believe it is our collective fear that has blinded us, paralyzed us. So I'm asking, when are we gonna step out of fear? The fear of death, especially, and wake up to the reality of the damages we are self-inflicting. Is this collective madness? Are we so paralyzed by fear that we just drop everything else? Are we unconsciously sabotaging our own collective future, whereas there are better ways to address this crisis? It's not about being paranoid. It's not everyone is against you. It's much more subtle what's happening now. That's my main message. But we as a collective, I feel, are going the wrong way, and we need to realize it. The more afraid we become, the weaker we are in our body and mind. The more irrational we then become, the more desperate we are. Therefore, the more at risk of being collectively abused. We should unite instead of staying separated. We're all in this together. When our governments are harming us more than helping us, it's for us to call them out. So I am appealing to your courage and inner strength. Do not take all you hear at face value, that includes this video, but seek your own answers. Well, I'm sure you will have understood by now. I do not agree with what's going on here. Seriously, what are we doing? I feel like we're collectively abusing ourselves. What's happening is so wrong. I feel like we've made a mess of ourselves, and this is disgraceful. I'm asking again, how long are we going to accept this total lockdown for? We know we would have nearly as much impact on the death by asking just fragile people to confine, the elderly people with chronic condition. I'm not satisfied with just a floating date for the end of the confinement. I think it should end now, given all the evidence. And I'm not the only one to ask for it, by the way. And I'm not neither calling for civil unrest. I'm just calling for reason to emerge. You do not block entire countries for months because of fear. We've lost our mind. Today I speak out because I can't stand any longer to watch these events unfolding without taking any action. I can't stand anymore the distortion of facts or even the blatant lies we're being fed. I can't stand the permanent state of fear in which we're progressively living. It's not new, unfortunately, all these things, influencing our reaction with the news they give us. And now it's taken such proportions that it really needs to be addressed because we're in the danger zone. It's time to wake up, people. It's always a big deal to accept restriction on our fundamental freedoms, whatever the circumstances, especially when we're not being told for how long it will be. Whether it is mass manipulation or not doesn't really matter. I think it's a combination of influences from some people and collective hysteria. But what really matters is that we're shaping the after coronavirus right now. So we need to react before we become totally paralyzed by fear. And I'm not talking about just right now, but for the months to come. Because this virus will be there in the future. It will spread regularly. And what are we going to do? We can't live in constant lockdown, can we? So, also, if it's indeed a manipulation, assume that for a second. If this chaos is being staged, then this entire plan can only work if we let them. Only if we accept blindly whatever we're told to do or not to do. Only if we surrender our own individual power. Because each of us individually has the power to think for themselves and make their own decisions. That's a power to choose. That's a power to say no. And collectively, we have the power to stop all of this. So no matter what, every day that goes by that we stay in confinement, we're hurting ourselves a little more. So what? Have we become a masochist civilization? Have we lost common sense? All governments are accountable to us. If they do not see how absurd what they are doing is for the public good, then we, as a collective, must remind them. I would suggest the following plan to step out of fear. Document yourself beyond the mainstream medias. Practice critical thinking. Then listen to your inner truth about what we live today. At the same time, stay healthy in your body. Eat healthy. Do exercise. Carry on doing the things that brings you pleasure and love. Talk to the people who are dear to you. Keep a connection open. Don't make yourself even more isolated, especially if you live alone. Now, during these times, you may also find overwhelmed by emotions, and you will need to process them and stay balanced. You may feel anger, especially, and the more you will hear to different points of views, such as my own on these events, the more you may feel this anger coming at you, because you will understand at some point things are not the way we've been told. And just a word of caution against anger. It's okay to feel that anger, because it gives you a huge amount of energy to step out of paralysis and take actions like spreading the word, like reading more, documenting yourself. But beware, because anger is a negative emotion, and negative emotions make our body weak. So you don't want to be weaker and then catch finally this COVID-19 or getting quite sick from it. Although, you should remember, lots of people get it like a seasonal flu, or some of them are asymptomatic. They barely notice anything. But, step out of anger to remain centered. That's my advice. I will put some links below the video as promised. There's also an article I've written 2 weeks ago that goes into more details about the certain numbers if you want to read that. But, this is entirely up to you what you can do now. My message now is out there. I want to say stay aware, use your discernment, apply critical thinking. So good luck to you. I'm Matthew PJ, and thanks for listening.